Sadie, I want to show you something. Go back to that other slide for just a second. See that word that Sadie was wondering if she would read? Who else is afraid to read that word? It's scary to us. So thank you. You did wonderful. Make every effort in the bond of peace to be one. Every effort to be connected. How many know that's hard to do? How many have gone through the challenges of trying to figure out how to stay connected in one way or another to some person or another? This week I was up at my other office. You know my other office up at Einstein's Bagels. I'm there every Thursday, right around the noon hour. I'm there for a couple hours. Come on up and see me. I love just sitting and talking with people. This week I got to talk to someone who I see there every single week. Michelle is one of the servers there. And she just happened to sit near me, and she's newlywed, real excited about life. Is about to make a big move to California. And so we were talking about all those things, and as often happens this time of year, it kind of devolved into politics. Right? And not in a bad way, just kind of that's where it happened to go. And she admitted to me that she wasn't registered to vote. And so I kind of asked her why, and she said this: I'm afraid what people will think if they know who I voted for. But don't you have some fears that way? No. Politics makes it so that we look at each other and we see divisions, don't we? Easily see divisions. And we may be comfortable in that, but we know that our stance that way will bring a backlash. And I got to tell you that some people are afraid of you for the same reason. Right? It's easy to be divided because of things like politics, economics, or this thing we call religion. Right? Religion, whose the very name of the word means to re-tie us together, religio, and yet so often divides us, separates us. I told her to come up here, I'd stick Robbie on her, and Robbie would get her registered. Because I said to her, it is more important that you vote than who you vote for. We have to figure out how to give that message of that voting ability, as well as so many other gifts in this world, aren't about us doing the same thing. It's about us moving together in what helps all of us, even when they make the wrong choice. Right? Our need for rightness, and often our desire to make you have wrongness, whoever the you is, divides us every single moment of our life, it seems. Why is it more important to be right than to be family? Why is it that we do that? I think we tell each other this story. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how we tell each other this story. One of them, some of you will remember because it comes from your youth. It comes from a movie. I want you to sing with me if you know it. It's Annie Oakley singing, and she says, "Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you."
No, you can't.
Yeah, we just keep going back and forth, don't we? We can do that all day long. And we do a lot of that, don't we? And we have that competition that separates us, and I have to be better than you, and you better than me. But then there's another song that you probably know as well, many of you, that tells the story even deeper. And it's a story of two cities, one in the valley, one on a mountaintop. And the letter goes up to say, "We heard you have a treasure up there on that mountain, and we want it." Well, it's all for you. It's with our brothers, sorry about the sexism, with our brothers we will share, but they're not satisfied with that. And so they go up and attack the city and go and get the treasure. And when they roll the stone back, underneath it is the treasure, and it says, "Peace on earth," is all it said. Go ahead and hate your neighbor. Go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven. You can justify it in the end. There won't be any trumpet blowing on the judgment day. And the bloody morning after, one tin soldier rides away. We find it so easy to let that division, that rightness, that disconnect, the my right over your right, get in the way. That's why I love today, this day in the Christian year. Do you know what it is? World Communion Sunday. This is the day that we try to, as much as possible, celebrate the opposite of that. We try to celebrate this table, which says that everyone has a place. This table where everyone is supposed to be welcome, where everyone can come and eat. And how many felt sometimes like it didn't quite live up to that? That sometimes you were excluded or pushed away. And I'm sorry that that happened. It's happened to me as well. But our job on this Sunday is to remember that this table is large enough for everyone. And that no one is to be pushed away. This is what helps us to see what it is that we don't see easily in our world. Marion Wright Edelman said this: "You can't be what you can't see." You can't be what you can't see. And on a regular basis, all those other messages of divisions and walls and barriers between us speak so loud that we sometimes can't see that which connects us. And this table is trying to help us to see what that doesn't tell us, what even our own hearts sometimes don't tell us. It reminds us of the truth. Embracing oneness is choosing to let something in that is not you, and letting that other have a space in you. Do you let that other come in? I watched a movie this week.
No.
Have I said that before? This is a movie I want you all to watch. It takes 20 minutes. It's a 20-minute long movie. You can go on your computer, type in 4.1 miles. That's the name of the movie, 4.1 miles. It's the story of a man named Kyriakos. He is a Coast Guard captain on the island of Lesbos, which is an island that sits 4.1 miles from the Turkish coast. A small little distance between Turkey and Greece. And he patrols that area, not in a bad way, because that's been the main thoroughfare for Syrian refugees to leave Asia and come to Europe. And he could be the guardian at the gate to say, "Nope, you're the other, stay away." And this movie is about how, instead, he chooses to reach out and find and embrace them. He said, "When I look into their eyes, I see their memories of war. And the only thing I'm hoping is that no one is missing." Because it shows him going out again and again. In one day, the whole movie is part of one day in his life as he goes to discover this a bunch of refugees, this boat that is halfway collapsed and is sinking, and this couple that's out there floating on their life jackets. And he goes out again and again to discover oneness with some people who are anything but the same as him. And the director of this movie, Daphne, I'm sorry about this last name. I tried really hard to say it right at the first service. I'll try really hard again. Matsiaraki. She says this. And this situation raises the questions about our collective responsibility. The choices we all make for ourselves and for others. We don't all confront the refugee crisis with the same immediacy as the Coast Guard captain portrayed here. But as our world becomes more interconnected and more violent, we do all face a choice. Would we act as he does to save the life of a stranger? Or would we turn away? Throughout our life, we need to ask that question, because that stranger, in some way or another, is going to float into our life. And we have to decide, do we open our hearts, our lives, ourselves enough to welcome them in? Do we let them be in that oneness with us? Whoever they are, however different they are, whatever strangeness there is that would separate us. On our Facebook page is a post. It's an invitation, really. And it's about the fact that this week, 50 new Syrian families have come to live right here in Tucson. And it's saying, why don't you come and eat with them? It's an invitation for you to be able to connect across the 4.1 miles that could separate you from them. Matthew Fox wrote this. There is one underground river, but there are many wells into that river: an African well, a Taoist well, a Buddhist well, a Jewish well, a Muslim well, a goddess well, a Christian well, and Aborigine wells. Many wells, but one river. To go down a well is to practice a tradition, but we would make a grave mistake, an idolatrous one, if we confuse the well itself with the flowing waters of the underground river. Many wells, one river. And our job is to see across the gaps that those different wells sometimes give to us. See past the 4.1 miles that separate us, or the wall that sits there between us. This week we mourn the passing of Shimon Peres. And he was one who could have sat in his walled fortress of Israel, but he chose to see beyond that. He chose to reach into that foreign space of his enemy, Yasser Arafat. And in that conversation began to change the violence of that region. Began to change what happens even today. He chose to step across the gap and to see a oneness with someone he had plenty of reason to not see oneness with. But to do this, we have to choose to see and embrace each other in spite of the differences that are always present. And they're there for any number of reasons. None of us does this well in the largest sense, but all of us are called to do it as much as we can, every moment that we can. This week I watched a movie that I've been wanting to see for a while, and on this card over here, this is a wonderful card that the library has set up, and I stole a movie before you guys got to it. And it's called Before Stonewall. And it talks about everything that happened before that event in the late 60s. And that which essentially started much of what has culminated in who you are today. Much of that LGBT acceptance and movement and difference in the world today than what it was before that event. And I think about that whole trend of things that has happened in that span. And it comes down to this. It was that community, the LGBT community, saying, we're not going to stand on the other side of the gap. We're going to come to you. We're going to be with you. We value sitting in the same churches as you. We value being part of the same communities as you. And will you accept us? Will you see beyond that gap? And those connections are so easy to lose. You know, every few years they moved me as a pastor. 15 years ago I was at First Church Phoenix, and it'd be simple to lose that connection because 15 years has passed. I'm 100 or so miles away. It'd be simple to say I don't have that connection, and then Caesar Lee dies and his son comes into town. And Brian has been a friend since First Church Phoenix. And I remember again the connections that we have. And so I began thinking about my friends up at First Church Phoenix and who they were and how much I loved them. And I thought about my senior pastor friend Peter, who was there. And Peter is not at First Church anymore. He's even farther away. He's in Olympia, Washington. But I felt that draw of connection from here to there. And I remembered who he was. But just not far from him in Olympia is a little town that it would be easy for me to not remember, to not know. It's a little town of about 8,000 people. It's called Burlington. You might have heard of it this week because that's where somebody took a gun at a mall and began shooting people. Do I choose to feel that connection? It's a distant one. It's far away from me, but I can let it penetrate me if I choose. And why is it sometimes that tragedy reminds us to do that so much better, so much easier than love? Why don't we remember before the tragedy happens? Why does loss call us back into community better than the relationship that should be there all along? I think part of it has to do with, it's not because we're selfish. I want you to know that. I think it's because we become self-centered. We get caught up in all the stuff that is us, all the important things that we're doing, and we forget. And I have to tell you that when I typed that out, my fingers missed a letter, a single letter. It was the letter C. And it made me see the word in a whole new way. Instead of self-centered, I saw self-entered. We enter into ourself, and we sit in that space that is us, both figuratively and literally. We sit there and we fail to see the connections this way. We miss on a regular basis how much we are one and connected to each other. My cousin, Bob, lives up in Round Valley in the Eastern Mountains, and he has a son named Dallas, and Dallas is a senior in high school this year. Dallas is one who can easily be disconnected. He's autistic, and sometimes a bit obnoxious because of that. His mom says, I'm not certain of the last time I saw him smile. And it would be so simple to disconnect from him because he disconnects easily from other people. And this is a big football town. They celebrate the state championships they've done in football. And so this week is a good week for football up there because it's homecoming week. And they got lots of great big burly guys that they could elect as homecoming king. And instead they elected my cousin's boy, Dallas. And they chose to see a connection to him beyond what he would even offer, maybe. They chose to honor him by putting the crown on him and say, "You're important to us." When I was Alice's age, good Mormon boy down in Texas, they sent me on a short-term mission trip, a 2-week trip. I went to the foreign land of Alvin, Texas, which is just south of Dallas. I was just south of Houston. I had to go, talk to all those heathen Baptists, and Catholics, and Methodists. And I thought I was just going to follow them around. But they pushed me to the front and said, "You get to knock on this door. You get to talk to whoever comes here." And it was a lady who showed up. And I went through the whole spiel saying, "Here's my truth. Look at this truth I have. Don't you want this truth?" And she said to me some words that I remember to this day. What is that? 15, 20 years later? She said, "I see the truth in what you say." Took me aback because, I was kind of used to everyone saying, "Yeah, don't need it. Got enough truth already." But you see, she belongs to a faith that tries to embrace the larger truth. She was a Baha'i. And I didn't quite get it when I was 17 years old. But it sat there, continued to eat at me, continued to move in me. Because the Baha'is have this sense of trying to find unity in the midst of all that diversity. The unity of one God who watches over all of us and that is in all of us.
Amen.
The unity of a religion that is not just my religion versus your religion, but that is somehow all of us together, just in different expressions of that one religion. The unity of us, humanity. That there is not several versions of humanity, but one humanity expressed in so many different and diverse ways. My spiritual journey, my walk has taken me through a whole lot of different things. Those heathen Baptists, those Catholics, those Lutherans and Methodists. And they all try to teach me their one truth. But the most important truth that I know happened the first day I was in a Methodist church. And it's not the first time I've learned it, and it's not the last. But it was important, so important, because I'd been in that religion that said only those who are members get to take a communion. And I was in that church that practiced a close communion that said we can't give it to anybody except who belongs here. And so I wasn't able to receive communion, even though I went there every week. And the first day I sat in this Methodist church, the pastor, Stephen, stood up there and said these words. In the Methodist church, we practice an open communion. You are welcome at this table. This is for you. Come and be part of this communion. I found a home in Methodism because at its core, it tries to remember oneness. The oneness of our children and our elderly. The oneness that expands beyond all of our definitions that would make it small. The oneness that calls us to try to step beyond those divisions. One bread, one body, one God working in us all. Will my servers please come forward?